Justice doesn't happen by accident. Meet Dave Ring, who wages war in the courtroom and on behalf of victims and families where sexual abuse has occurred. Hello everyone, I'm Neville Johnson, and this is This Week in Law, where justice meets real people. I'm very pleased to have David Ring here of Taylor and Ring in Southern California to be our particular guest. Dave is a very notable lawyer. He's won many awards, including the Clay Award, which is given to the top lawyers in California by the State Bar. Dave, what's the nature of your practice?
No, it's great to be here. So I represent children and adults who've been sexually abused or sexually harmed or assaulted. I've been doing that for a long time, for over 30 years. That's the main part of my practice.
The case you started off with that really made a reputation was Moreno Valley School District. What happened there?
That was a case from a few years ago. It happened in 2020. And that's a case where he represented a 13-year-old boy. He's an 8th grader, and he is being really seriously bullied on campus at his middle school. Gone on for weeks and months. And one day on Thursday, one of the bullies comes up behind him while he's walking between classes and sucker punches him in the back of the head. And this kid, his name's Diego, great kid by all accounts. And Diego's so upset, as you can imagine by this, he tells a teacher. And the next day he goes in to the administration with his adult sister, and they tell the administrators what happened. Very serious stuff. And the administrator at the time says, "Hey, Diego, I want you to go home today. It's Friday, and I want you to come back Monday. I'm going to take care of this. This is going to end today." And he believes her. And he comes back Monday, and he's feeling good. And it's noon, and he comes out of a classroom, and the bullies have circled the classroom door, waiting for him to ambush him. And he walks out, and they punch him, and one kid sucker punches him from the side really hard. Diego falls, his head hits a pillar, and he's unconscious, never regains consciousness. He's on life support for 10 days and passes away. So why did this happen? That administrator that he told on Thursday never did one thing. Never did one thing Thursday, Friday, or over the weekend. The sucker punch on the Thursday afternoon, that was on a security camera, easily found. The school had security cameras all over the school, and this was a little window where this happened. If she had spent 5 minutes asking someone to pull up that camera, she would have found it and seen the kid who punched him. And so it was a really horrific case, but that was a case that garnered national headlines and really went a long way to having schools change their bullying policies.
And you represent the family.
I represented the family of Diego, basically his guardians. His parents had passed away when he was very young. But he grew up as his aunt and uncle and siblings, and he was just a great kid by all accounts. It was an incredibly sad case.
Did you have a trial?
That case settled short of a trial. It was the largest bullying settlement in America. It settled for $27 million.
Didn't you have to have the law changed?
So in that case, not to dive too deep into the weeds on legal stuff, but California has a wrongful death statute that tells you who's allowed to sue for the death of a relative. And in this instance, at that time, the law would not have allowed his aunt and uncle to bring a lawsuit. They did not have standing. And we thought that was really unfair because they had raised this kid since he was 2-3 years old. And so we went to the California legislature, and they had obviously heard about this horrific situation and case, and they changed the wrongful death statute to allow the aunt and uncle to bring the case on behalf of Diego.
That's pretty impressive. How were you able to do that, to get the legislature involved?
Well, we went and found the right legislature who believed in this case and believed in doing things to make sure bullying is put to an end. And they went to the legislature and explained the situation, and it passed unanimously.
What are the typical sexual abuse cases you see, and where do they come from?
The typical sexual abuse cases that my firm handles, a lot of them deal with sexual abuse in schools. But it can arise anywhere. We've had cases with religious institutions, youth organizations, you name it, sporting, little leagues, things like that. But a lot of them deal with schools, and it's a perpetrator who's a teacher or a coach or a staff member who is there to take advantage or sexually exploit a child. And we've represented kids who are ages 5 to 17 years old who've been sexually exploited or abused by an adult supervisor.
How prevalent is sexual abuse?
It's prevalent. It's prevalent in this country. It's unfortunate. It's a despicable crime. And look, there's predators who are pedophiles, and so where do they go to find their victims? They go where kids are. They go work in schools. They go work in youth leagues. They go work in places where there's kids. And so you see a lot of predators who somehow gain access to a job in a school, and they're there to try to take advantage of kids.
How often are the perpetrators prosecuted criminally?
A lot. I think things have really changed over the years where victims come forward more easily. There's not as much victim shaming as there was when I was a young lawyer handling these cases. And so you see a lot of victims coming forward, a lot of perpetrators being prosecuted and sent to prison.
When the client comes to you, to what extent are you there to console, help them, and give them therapy, if at all?
Well, so when the clients come to us, it's usually their parents who are coming to us. And but obviously we're dealing with the victim themselves along the way. And so look, these victims have already been put through a lot, and the last thing they need is to live in litigation, which is difficult for anybody under any circumstance. I don't care what kind of case it is. But to have a young victim of abuse then have to go through the rigors of litigation is really tough. And so we do everything we can at our law firm to really limit the kids' involvement. They have bigger issues to focus on. And so, they're usually treating with a therapist or a psychologist, and that's super important. We're not their therapists or psychologists. We're their lawyers. So we really try to limit their roles, and there's certain things they obviously have to participate in, and they usually do a fantastic job. These kids are unbelievable witnesses. They're so resilient. And so we deal with their parents a lot more than we do with the kid.
Your first case was in the 1990s. What was that about?
So this was back in the 1990s, and again, it was a teacher who sexually abused a 5th grade boy. And back then, it was a different world with these cases because they weren't talked about, they weren't publicized, they all settled. You didn't really know what they settled for. No one wanted to talk about them, and they never went to trial. I can't think of one case that went to trial, and this case did. And my law partner at the time and I went and tried this case in Los Angeles, and we ended up getting a really substantial verdict of $10 million. And in 1990s, that was a substantial verdict for this kid. And so that was really the first time that one of these cases had gone to a trial. And this kid, he took the stand. I'll never forget it. This kid, he was probably 12 or 13 years old by that time, took the stand. Phenomenal witness, and tells his story, and you look at the jury and most of the jurors have tears in their eyes come rolling down their cheeks.
What does it do to you? I mean, as a lawyer, doesn't you take this home with you, right?
I don't take it home with me. No, I've learned that you've got to have boundaries with your job. I'm really good about not taking it home with me. I love it. I'm passionate about it. But I also know that I don't think it's conducive to any lawyer to bring their work home with them and let it impact their family life. So no, I don't bring it home with. But that doesn't mean I treat it, like I just don't leave it there at the office. I mean, I live it, but I'm able to separate my role as their lawyer from the rest of my life.
So you had that case 30 years ago. Tell me how the system has operated since then. Has there been improvement across the board somewhat?
There has been. I mean, we've brought a lot of these cases, and a lot of times I like to say I've never had to sue the same school district 2 times, because after the first time they've changed their policies, they've changed how they supervise their employees. Now, there's some exceptions to that. There's some massive, large school districts out there that really struggle with supervising their employees, but there has been improvement. That doesn't mean it's gone away. You know, I've told this story a few times where after the verdict we just talked about, the one in the 1990s, I turned to my law partner and I said, you know, this is a righteous case and it was great to do it, but we're not going to have many more of these cases down the road, because I would suspect school districts and other organizations make this their number one priority, to protect kids from being abused by adults who work for them. I go, that, you know, they're going to change this. This just won't happen very much. But I was wrong. And for whatever reason, it's continued. And here we are 30 years later, it still happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen as much. Hopefully schools have learned a lot, and they have. There's a lot of laws that have passed, a lot of training that's required, a lot of education, but it still happens.
Do you have any recommendation for parents to prevent this?
I'll tell you what, with social media and phones and the ability to communicate nowadays surreptitiously, it is really, really tough to know what your child is doing when you're not around. There's all sorts of apps that you're texting someone and the message disappears instantly. And so that's how these predators work. They communicate with these kids, they gain their trust, they start talking to them outside of the classroom, and they lure them in. But as parents, you've just got to be aware of that. You've got to kind of have the antenna up certain times where you're like, well, that just doesn't seem right to me, or why is that teacher trying to you know, be around my child when on a weekend or when they shouldn't be. You just have to be in tune and realize it's out there. Doesn't mean you need to be paranoid of every person you come in contact with, but you have to be aware.
You have had a big case against DCFS. What was that about? Or what is it about?
Well, it was a few years ago, and DCFS is the Department of Children and Family Services here in Los Angeles, and their obligation is to supervise, oversee, and protect kids who are in a dangerous environment in their home. And that's a lot of what they do, is to make sure that, because the parents might pose a danger to the kid, the DCFS is there as the guardian to the kid to make sure they're not harmed in their home. And so this case was a couple years ago where this girl, Felicia, she was probably 9 years old, and she had a troubled mom. Her mom was into meth. Her mom was a drug addict, and her mom did not protect Felicia. And because of things that happened, DCFS was supervising that relationship. They had an obligation to go there and, is everything okay, Felicia? You know, is your mom, you know, everything okay at the house? Well, the mom ended up living with several men, one of whom had a conviction for unlawful sexual activity with a minor, a conviction. And DCFS, they're supposed to investigate who's living in the home with this girl, and they would have easily found that, but they didn't look. And the sad part is that man ended up sexually abusing Felicia. And then other men in the same household ended up sexually abusing Felicia. Horrific, over many, many months. One of the absolute worst cases I've ever seen. And so the case was brought against DCFS for their negligence. That case went to a jury trial in Los Angeles, and the jury awarded Felicia $45 million because they were so outraged by what had happened to her. And it was horrific what had happened to her.
David Wren, top lawyer. We're so thankful he was here. We're so thankful you watched this. it would be great if you would like us wherever you watch this show, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.